Hello, Fluffers, and welcome back to Fluff It. My name is Felix, a purple wolf from the United States.
And my name is Uno, a green raccoon from the United Kingdom.
And welcome back to Fluff It. Today's topic, we are going to be talking finally about Anthrocon, a convention we both went to a couple months ago. And maybe having it be recorded a little bit later is good since it allows us to reflect on it.
Yeah, definitely. So it was back in July, I think it was.
It was that first week in July during the weekend or the week of the 4th.
Yes. So yeah, it has been a few months, but like what you just said, I think it's quite good to be doing it now to sort of think back on it.
Yeah, so with this episode, we will be talking about this our general observations about Anthrocon, what we enjoyed, what our favorite panels were, things that we liked about it compared to some other conventions, and just recommendations. So with this Anthrocon, for anyone who is new to Anthrocon, like what is it? For non-furries and newer furries, Anthrocon is a furry convention that is held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania every year, typically very late June, very early July, around the time of the 4th of July. It is one of the largest furry conventions. It might be the largest, although it has recently been going back and forth with Mid Fur Fest, which I believe takes place in December or near December in Chicago.
Yeah, so I'm like what you've just said, I'm not 100% sure which one is the largest now, but Anthrocon was always the one that everybody knew about. So when I was first getting into the fandom, obviously I'm from the UK, so we only have one furry convention over there. But Anthrocon was always kind of the one that you knew about. So, it was like everyone's dream to go to Anthrocon one day. Like it was the one that you'd see all the videos of like way back in 2013, 2014. So it kind of feels like one of the biggest or the biggest because it was just the one that was so well known to me when I was like first into the fandom.
Yeah, it's one of those fairy conventions that you just like when you think fairy convention, it's either that for me or it was Eurofurence. And that probably was influenced by some of the European furs I know. Now going into Pittsburgh, it was kind of weird. I don't like to compare this. It was going into Pittsburgh, it was quite kind of cheesy in some ways because I know a bunch of us furries, we love Zootopia, and I this could not like once the comparison was made in my head, I could not let it go. It was somewhat like when Judy left her like hometown in that train and then like you go through the tunnel, you go out and you see this huge city. That was very much like how I felt when we entered into Pittsburgh. And it was just very central. Trying to get out of the car, get a hotel room, get the baggage. Oh my gosh, it was a chaotic fur fest.
Yeah, I totally agree. It really was very similar to that scene in Zootopia or Zootropolis, we call it in the UK, because we kind of went from the countryside to all of a sudden being in the city, like out of nowhere. And Pittsburgh is quite an unusual city to me personally. It's very different to a lot of the UK cities that I'm used to. And that was my first time sort of properly being in a city in the US. I mean, I'd already been in Atlanta, but not really in the city at that point. So it was quite an interesting experience for me as well. And yeah, like you said, I mean, the only other furry convention I'd been to previously was Confuzzled, which is in the UK. And compared to arriving at Confuzzled, because obviously we traveled there by train, like just when we arrived, it was a lot less kind of chaotic, but I would say equally as exciting. I think the first moment when you arrive at a con is such an exciting moment.
It was just kind of like weird in a good way to see that even the Westin, that was the hotel we stayed at in at Anthrocon, had its own persona. It was like Westy the like wolf or something. It was quite cute. But as you like would notice around Pittsburgh, they would have like these clever furry puns for like food shops and like deals. And it was actually kind of cool to see a city embrace the furry convention a lot. I've been to Megaplex, I've been to FWA, and those conventions are a bit more isolated and confined to the hotel in that general area. But with Anthrocon, it's very much in the city of Pittsburgh.
I completely agree. So that was one thing I noticed as being very different to Confuzzled or to any other kind of convention I've been to really before. The only thing I can kind of compare it to in the UK is if anyone's ever heard of the Goth Weekend in Whitby, that it does seem to be an event where the whole town kind of gets in on it. And it's often quite a surreal experience to be in like a town or a city that's kind of embracing a whole theme, which was definitely the vibe that I got in Pittsburgh, although very different because obviously it was furries, but just the feeling of the city being so like embracing of it and having like other places like bars and cafes having furry themed things available and just like open up to furries was just such a surreal experience. And it's something that I really don't think you would experience anywhere else.
Yeah, I thought the city for the most part was very welcoming. I only saw one bad instance where a local kicked a fursuiter and said some derogatory things, but I would say other than that isolated incident, I would say the city was very welcoming, and I felt very generally safe in the convention space. Tons of security. During the block party, they had like a lot of barricade, a lot of police presence there. And it's good that the furry conventions are taking safety into a big matter.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, the convention center itself and the con as a whole did feel very safe. I mean, I know everybody has a different experience at cons, and everyone feels a different way depending on their individual experience. But for me personally, and I think for both of us, really, it felt like a very safe environment. Because I mean, I know like at some points we both sort of wanted to do different things, so it always kind of felt like we could just kind of wander around and nothing bad was going to happen. It was just quite a safe environment. Everyone I spoke to was just really friendly and nice. And
Agreed.
uh, like, as always at conventions, it's just nice to be in that sort of environment where you kind of get on with a lot of people because we all have that common interest.
Yeah, so the size of Anthrocon, you could find quite anything there. There were a lot of panels, there were a lot of dances, concerts, a ginormous artist alley in Dealer's Den. You had a lot of options, and it was really neat to wander around and just see all the options you can do.
Yeah, there really was something for everyone at AnthroCons. So, you know, whether you're into art, games, literally anything you could imagine, there would be something that anyone could enjoy. So, I mean, we did quite a lot of things. We did the artist alley a few times. We did the raves. We did a few different kind of events and panels and stuff. And even just walking around, you'll see so many things happening and amazing suits and just like it. I mean, really, you don't even need to go to anything. You can just walk around and have an amazing time just from chatting to people and watching all the fursuiters and stuff. So it is such a big convention and such a vast amount of different activities. You could definitely never get bored at Anthrocon.
Yeah, there were like a lot of there's just a ton. I know we went to the artist alley and dealer's den quite a bit. I still have a bunch of the stuff I got in the room, including that cheetah or snow leopard. I forgot. I really loved how they did the formatting for both artist alley and the dealer's den. The panels were quite fascinating because you had some really odd ones, such as there's like a court case that was being
Yeah.
run by Alkali that was like 2 to 3 hours. I joined a little late. I couldn't catch up on what was going on. There is like a 24/7 mafia routine, which is a deception game. that I did a little bit with. There were quite a good handful of just general panels. I know we ran a podcasting panel, which that's another story for another time. If anyone went there, thank you so much. Uh, just a lot of technical difficulties on my
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in regards to that, we will have to tell that story maybe on another episode, actually, because I feel like we have enough to talk about already today. But we did indeed host our own panel. It was our first time in front of a live audience. Quite a few people showed up, which was really good. It was very exciting. I was incredibly nervous because I mean, I don't really do any kind of speaking in front of an audience, but I think it went pretty well for the most part.
Yeah,
Aside from the technical difficulties, I think the panel itself.
I thought it went well. I mean,
yeah,
I enjoyed it I enjoyed a ton of it. The only thing I didn't like was the recording not saving.
yeah.
But again, that's a different story.
Yeah, we will tell that story. I feel like that is an important story to tell at some point.
I blame Scrappy.
Yeah, me too.
When in doubt, blame Scrappy. Not my fault, it's Scrappy's. I think my favorite panel was Help, the Pandemic Turned Me into a Furry, which was actually done by one of our regular listeners, Triangular Tooth. It was just really fascinating hearing about his like story and like how he was introduced to the fandom in I think the late 90s, early 2000s, correct me, Tooth, and this getting reintroduced into it during the COVID pandemic, which is like something good to hear about because I know a lot of bad things occurred during the pandemic, but there's also a lot of good things that did occur that people did to like try and get themselves through the pandemic. And it's just great.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
Oh no, it's all
Carry
good.
on.
And it's just great to see people like trying to like get on with and this curve side the negatives of the pandemic. So it's we're super glad that Tooth found us in the furry fandom.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, that was my favorite panel for sure. He did such an amazing job of speaking in front of everyone, and his panel was just so funny and at the same time like just so kind of insightful into kind of the early days of the fandom and also like his kind of experience through the pandemic of it. And like you said, you know, if it wasn't, even though so many bad things came from the pandemic, if it wasn't for that, we probably would never have met Tooth, and we might not have even really got to meet each other in person. So it was kind of a nice reminder of that. And also, what I really liked during his panel too was that he kind of encouraged the audience to say a little bit about their opinions on the fandom and
Yes.
kind of what got them into it. And I just found that fascinating to hear about the like so many different reasons and different opinions on those sort of things. And yeah, it was just fascinating to hear him speak and to hear everybody else's kind of input. That was for sure my favorite panel.
Yeah, Tooth. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was done.
Yeah, Tooth nailed it. I mean, he controlled the panel. He was able to get through the technical problems we weren't able to get through. And I just really enjoyed getting to know about him and his personal furry story. And I feel like everyone has a slightly different story of how they got into the furry fandom and what influenced the furriness to come out. And that could be a completely different episode topic on its own, how you got into the furry fandom. But it was just, in general, it was very awesome getting to meet him, getting to meet his friend, who is currently in the conversion to becoming a furry, no pun intended. And it was just neat getting to meet other furries because I was able to run into Uncle Kage again, which was very pleasant. Was able to meet Malibu Moz, which was a very pleasant meeting. Got to meet one of your friends, Circle, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, just one of the best things about conventions, obviously, is getting to meet so many people. And I think it was when you were at the Mafia or Werewolves, I think they call it. I spent quite a bit of time just sort of wandering because that's one of my favorite things to do at conventions, just walk around and take photos of other people's costumes and stuff. And I got to talk to a lot of people during that time, and a few people I recognized from online and a few people I'd never seen. But it's just such a good vibe to wander around in like your own fursuit that you've made or designed or had commissioned, and get to meet other people with such incredible costumes. And just the range of costumes at
Oh yeah.
Anthrocon in comparison to other events is just incredible. Like so many different fursuits, different species, different makers. It's just, you could literally walk around all day and still not see everyone. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think the fursuit parade had a couple thousand participants, and it took over an hour and a half for the parade start to finish to be conducted. So that
Yeah.
was really impressive, AnthroCon's part. Yeah, I remember just seeing all the very different fursuits, and it was amazing. I mean, Ramona, your naked mole rat, was just such a fun character, and I like would go around occasionally at Megaplex and at my college to some furries. It's like, yeah, I was at Anthrocon, and they were like, "Oh, you were at Anthrocon? What was your fursuit?" And I was like, "Oh, I was a purple wolf." And it's like, "Oh, I might have seen you." And but then when I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was with a naked mole rat," everyone's like, "Oh wait, I saw the naked mole rat." So I remember a lot of people were commenting about it. It's
Yeah, I was honestly quite surprised because I mean, the reason why I chose to take Ramona is because I knew I'd be flying with my suit. So, out of all of my suits, Ramona has the smallest head, so I knew I could take her in hand luggage on the plane, which was why the entire reason why I took her. But I was really glad I did because so many people seemed to really like her. She just seemed to somehow gain a lot more like positive recognition at Anthrocon than I ever have with her before. So that was really nice. It's honestly quite, I don't really know the word, like humbling, I want to say, in a way, to have so many people commenting on something that I made. So yeah, that was really fun. And like you mentioned, the parade was a mammoth of a parade. That was a very, very long parade. I mean, we had to wait a long time to get going because there were just that many fursuiters. But I think once we actually got outside and got into the actual parade itself, it just made it all worth it. And
yeah.
just seeing the general public's reactions as well when all the fursuiters came outside, that was just an experience that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Yeah, it was such a really fun experience. Waiting in the room wasn't.
No,
I think
we
everyone
have to
should
forget
really.
about that bit.
I think it was the longest time I was ever in a fursuit, so I'm happy I was able to go through it. But the parade was a lot of fun, being able to like wave to people, people taking photos, recording you. It's quite weird being on the parade end versus being someone watching. And I remember very vividly, or I remember very well, like my mom like screaming at me like Felix, and I was like, wait, am I about to trip? And apparently the person next to her had like a young girl. It was her birthday, so I think my mom talked about that Felix was gonna go say hi, so I wasn't aware about it, but it was a lot of fun, and it definitely I think made her day. So it's great to like see that, hey, you're putting positive like impacts on people in the parades. But yeah, it was such a fun experience, and being able to do it with furs or furries, because we did it with Tooth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just such a good vibe. It's such a good atmosphere. And getting to hang out with Tooth a lot was really fun as well. And also his friend who came with him, Kai Panda, I think was his furry name. And just, I mean, we spent a few evenings going to the raves with them as well, and that was just so much fun. I mean, I've been to the raves at Confuzzle, but the Anthrocon raves are just on a whole other level.
Oh yeah,
They were
definitely.
so much fun.
Yeah, the raves were like on a whole different level at Anthrocon because I also did Megaplex this year, and it was like night and day when you compared raves. I mean, Anthrocon went like all out, and it was a lot of fun. I've never really done much of the raves, personally. Uno dragged me into doing some of the raves, which I enjoyed. I mean, I actually turned out really enjoying myself. So I think we were out for like at least during that weekend, like 5 hours at the rave. Has to be at least five, for sure.
Yeah, raves are one of my favorite parts of furry conventions because I mean I used to go, well, still do when I can. I used to go to the night events at Goth Weekend a lot, which are a lot smaller and a lot less furries, but a kind of a similar thing. And it's so to me, it was always like before I started going to furry conventions, it was always the thing that I wanted to do when I eventually did go to a convention. I just find them so much fun. And Anthrocon was also the first time I ended up on the stage.
Yes.
There is a video of me on stage, which I still need to actually post. I keep forgetting. Yeah, there's me as a very small little mole rat surrounded by other fursuiters on the stage, which is honestly, even though it was just a silly kind of evening, it was just honestly something I never really thought would actually be me in a way, because you kind of always see those videos of all the fursuiters dancing on the stage, and it was just a thing I never thought I would be one of those people. But I remember we were stood together with Tooth and I was just dancing in the crowd. And this random guy, I have no idea who it was, came over and he was like, "Oh, you should be up on the stage. You should be on stage." And he helped me up onto the stage, and I was up there for quite a while.
Yeah, we
but that
turned
was
around.
it was such a good atmosphere just being up there, and you kind of forget the insecurity of like, because I mean the idea of being on stage, you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm too shy or whatever, but everyone's having such a good time and everyone was just so caring towards each other as well. I noticed because when we were on the stage, when I'd kind of had enough, I was starting to get a bit hot, so I thought I better head off before I get too hot. So I just kind of walked through the crowd, but everyone moved out of the way. You know, someone helped me down the stairs. It was just such a good environment, and just everyone looking out for each other and everyone having such a great time.
Yeah, that's one thing I did want to bring up, because I definitely did observe a lot more extroverted traits in you when you were wearing Ramona. It was quite uh, like it was quite humorous in some ways. Just like turning around and like Ramona was just like interacting with you like very like hyper silly. But yeah, I was with Tooth and we turned around and you were gone and we were like, where did Ramona go? And then a few minutes later, I think it was Nick. It's like, oh, there's Ramona, and we look. It's like,
yeah, I need to share those videos. I keep meaning to. I keep forgetting because I've just been sharing commission stuff, but okay. I will.
Now, what do you think was the kind of like the weirdest like thing you saw at the convention? Like something that you were not expecting, just like some like pure random.
Okay, I have a good answer for this one. The guy with the fans.
Oh, I was gonna say that.
I kind of want to let you talk about that because I feel like the way you describe that is quite funny.
So at Anthrocon, yeah. I forgot the furry's name, but he has like this kind of improv game show where he has this big box, he rolls it on the ground, and depending on what you get, he punishes you by whacking a fan into your like kneecaps. And he was like going after quite everyone. It was like punishment time. Roll the dice of destiny, or like the dice of disappointment or something. And there is some really wacky interactions, because obviously when you're whacking people with fans, it's something you don't quite think is normal. So you're like, I'm nervous, but I'm curious a little bit. And then you have like people like Mongolian throat singing at him, which he like replies, "I hate Irish music." Like whack the guy. There was like a furry cult where there's like this goat furry or dragon where everyone started praying towards. And it was just kind of a really wacky experience. And poor rest in peace to the poor tiger that he like called out.
Yeah, I remember at one point as well, because like what you said, we wanted to watch, but we also didn't want to get hit. So I remember me and you were stood kind of in the area, but like away from the circle because we didn't want to get hit. And then at one point he came running around, smacking everyone, and came out of his way to get the two of us. So there was absolutely no escaping it whatsoever. We were stood quite far away and he had to come all the way out to get us.
Yeah, someone caused ultra punishment, but he's usually there every Anthrocon. So if you want to test your bravery, you have him. But other than that, I mean, there wasn't really anything overly like wacky at Anthrocon. There were some gorgeous fursuits. My favorite was this orange. Forgot what the animal was supposed to be, but it's kind of like this Mexican folklore canine dragon mix that had very Oaxacan colors, which is kind of like if you think Dante from Coco when he like has those multicolors. It was such a gorgeous fursuit. There was a anglerfish fursuit that was really well done. Then I think there was a raccoon named Jester. He had assuming it's a he, Jester fursuit, which is a Jester raccoon, was an incredibly adorable suit. And then I'm trying to remember, there were plenty of suits that were.
Yeah, I remember it like a demon suit. It was kind of like black, white, and red, I think. Mainly white. I don't know the name, but I think they were in the dance competition. I really liked that suit.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Really amazing suit.
One of the dancers.
Yeah.
Their fursuit was really amazing. And being able to dance in a fursuit like that, very impressive.
Yeah, it looked like a very heavy suit as well, so they did an incredible job.
Now, kind of beginning to close on Anthrocon, for anyone who is thinking about going to Anthrocon next year, because I think we can both safely say, do it. Anthrocon, amazing convention, definitely go. At least once in your furry life. What should a furry be considering when they are preparing to visit and stay in Pittsburgh for Anthrocon?
I mean, I don't really think there's anything different than that you need to consider than any other furry convention. So if you have been to furry conventions before, you're probably going to know everything that you're going to need to be prepared. But I would just say, make sure you have like plenty of water, plenty to eat. Make sure you bring a bit of money for the dealer's den, because I can assure you will want to spend money in there. And in Pittsburgh, I mean, really, it's just a case of like, think about if you want to check out anywhere else in the city, or make sure you have enough time for everything. I don't think we really went anywhere else, but we did eat somewhere else one night, so that was quite good. Other than that, there isn't really much else that comes to mind. Yeah, I can't think of much else.
The only thing I would say for Anthrocon is, I would say, the largest of the furry venues, because while Megaplex, Furry Week in Atlanta, Eurofurence, Confuzzled, these conventions happen around a hotel space and a convention center, very much the same with Anthrocon, but because of the amounts of people coming to Anthrocon, I think it was like 13,000 people this Anthrocon. Really impressive. Not everyone can get into the hotel next to the convention center. So if you want to be closer, you probably want to begin booking earlier rather than later.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just like any major city, I would say Pittsburgh is relatively safe, but you do want to travel with a buddy at night, just to be on the safe side. Just practicing the buddy system, and as Uno mentioned, 621. Make sure you get 6 hours of sleep, as hard as that could be. I remember us being up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
2 meals a day and 1 shower. So, but I would say this: if you want to be closer to the convention center, book a little early.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely book early. And if you do need to stay somewhere that's not the actual convention hotel, make sure you know where it is and know how to get to the convention center from there. Because I have definitely made that mistake in the past at different events of, you know, ending up somewhere and then not really knowing how to get to the event from there. So it's better to just plan ahead a little bit in that sense. Just make sure you've got a bit of an idea of where you're going.
Yeah, so I think that's everything we wanted to talk about Anthrocon. I guess for me, it was my general thoughts was it was an amazing furry convention. I absolutely loved every single second. I was very sad to leave. And you know, I was super happy of spending it with Uno, spending it with Tooth. I mean, these are two furries that I met during the pandemic, and this was really my first time getting to spend time with the two of them in a furry setting, and it was just a lot of fun to be spending it with you.
I completely agree. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better experience of my first Anthrocon and also my first trip to the United States in general. Like, it has been one of the best experiences I've ever had. I couldn't have asked for it to be any better, and to have spent it with anybody else would just not have been the same at all. And I really can't wait for the next time I'm able to get over there and go to a convention, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Hopefully, Furry Week in Atlanta.
I'm very much hoping so.
And
It's up
finally,
in the air,
it's happening during a time of the year where I can do it.
Yes.
Perfect graduation gift. But I highly encourage Anthrocon, and huge thank you to Uncle Kage and all of the furry crew that have committed countless hours of making Anthrocon very safe, very enjoyable. It takes a lot of effort to work in a furry convention, especially doing it for free, sacrificing a lot of free time so people can make fantastic memories. And that's just something I wanted to bring up is huge thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, a massive thank you to everyone who goes to all the effort to put this together and just like making it such an amazing experience for so many people, because just hundreds, thousands of people enjoy it so much. And it really is such a big part of the fandom. I like what you said earlier. I feel like every furry should do this at least once. You know, even if you never get to do it again, if you've done it at least once, it's way worth it.
I absolutely agree. If you're a new furry, like this is a great way of meeting people and is like getting to know yourself more as a furry. It's just an absolutely fantastic experience, and I definitely wholeheartedly recommend it.
Absolutely. I could not have said that any better myself.
But that is all for today's episode of Fluff It. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us talk about Anthrocon.
And honestly, thank you to all the listeners for sticking around, even though we've been very slow recently. So yeah, thank you for that.
Well, till the next episode of Fluff It, stay fluffy and have a fluff-tastic day.
We'll see you all soon. Goodbye.